How's it going, guys? I'm Connor from Running Warehouse, and I'm here with Brian Moore, Chief Product Officer at Saucony, and Ted Fitzpatrick, VP of Product. These are the product guys, the ones that bring all the latest and greatest in Saucony innovation. Today, we are going to be talking about the Endorphin line. Ted, it was about 5 years ago that you and I were sitting here in Austin, Texas, talking about the Endorphin Pro. Really a revolutionary shoe in the space, and we've come a long way since then. Maybe can you take a step back and tell us how this line got started, what was the inspiration, and how we've got to where we are today?
Yeah, sure. It's hard to believe it's been 5 years, but it was right here 5 years ago, talking about Endorphin, the Endorphin Pro, the launch, the speed, all the excitement around that. And I think for us, it started a few years before in the development phase, talking to a lot of the athletes and starting to see this shift in performance and looking at product through a different lens of how can product amplify and help on the performance side. And it came at the same time as more and more development on new foam technologies were happening. So things like PIBAs were out there in the world, but they weren't really being applied in running footwear. People had seen it, and the challenge was always it's too expensive. You can't afford it. No one's gonna pay for it. And I think at that time, looking at it through the lens of what's best for the runner and performance, of let's build it, let's engineer it, let's test it. And if it does deliver on the experience and make running faster, easier, better, recover better, then we can find a way to commercialize it. And it started, back in 2018 with some of the prototypes, getting them on a lot of the athletes. So people like a Jared Ward, and seeing how does it perform in race conditions, in lab conditions. Yeah, that was sort of the genesis of the process, and really trying to be a leader in that space of saying, let's not be held back by the constraint of what there has been in the past on price and limitations in sourcing materials. Let's kind of shoot for the moon. And I think that first Endorphin was really a big step forward for the industry and certainly for Saucony.
Yeah, and it wasn't just you and I speaking here. We also chatted with Jared Ward at the initial launch of the Endorphin Pro, and I know before that shoe came out, he was wearing Type A's, he was wearing Kinvaras. Those were kind of normal shoes back then, and once he got that initial prototype of the Endorphin on his feet, he couldn't look back. His performances went up, his recovery went up, everything changed after that point. But year after year, the shoes continue to advance. We've seen small improvements in foam technologies, tweaks in plates. Can you tell us about how you continue to improve this shoe and make those micro adjustments to performance?
Yeah. I think the first one we made was when we were doing Endorphin Pro, the original, is we had lots of different prototypes and works, looking at lots of different plates. We believe carbon fiber to be, the perfect material to create that propulsive, more efficient ride. But at the same time, we were testing other plates, and we had things like nylon plates. So we got down that path and said, all right, the Pro as we know it, with the layers of Power Run PB, that PIBA foam with a full carbon fiber plate, was creating this experience. But we also said, there's a runner out there that just wants the feeling of fast for tempo runs, for every day, for a little bit more universal use. So that led to the speed. And even that, internally, there was debates are we gonna trade people down? Are we gonna lose business? And it was no, there's two different segments. There's gonna be a consumer that wants the purest form of performance. They see athletes in it. They know that it's gonna deliver on race day. And then there's something that's a little bit more democratic, that's gonna speak to a broader, wider audience. And it's still perfect if you want it on race day, but it's great for those training runs, those tempo runs, those track workouts. And that was sort of the birth of the Speed.
Yeah, I feel like the Endorphin Speed was a market leader. Everything was about speed and efficiency with Superfoams in the early days. You guys really opened it up to more people and allowed it for use for pretty much any day of the week. Can you talk a little bit more about the full Endorphin line and what that means in terms of someone who maybe doesn't know, has never ran in the shoe before? What does Endorphin mean?
Yes, so for us, Endorphin is all about the feeling of fast. So it's this idea of creating an experience that makes you feel fast, and sort of behind that is we're really making a system that makes the runner more efficient. So we do that through, we'd say, super foams, premium foams, whether it's Power Run PB, Power Run HG, another foam we'll talk about in a little bit today, combined with what we would say is our speed roll. So a plated midsole with a little bit more aggressive toe spring, and then generally a thicker stack. So we know that Speed, Pro, those types of shoes are gonna have a higher stack than what you'd find in an everyday training shoe to put more of that cushioning, rebound, comfort underfoot, and then sandwiched between with that plate. And we can do it with a nylon plate, we can do it with a carbon plate, we can do it with a modified plate, different executions.
So year after year, we continue to make small improvements. I feel like I've ran in every Endorphin shoe, I've ran in every super shoe on the market, and the shoes have all gotten really good, but they've almost hit a point where everyone was fairly equal. I didn't think we could get much better. Then, now, coming up on 2025, we have this huge innovation with a new foam. Can you tell us about how you continue to push the foams forward and what that's gonna be like for the end user?
Yeah, I think the thing that's great at Saucony is there's definitely a culture of innovation and a culture of like going fast and pushing the limits. And with that comes a lab team, a science team, a development team that's constantly out there sort of mining for what's new. So looking within the industry and then looking outside to say, are there new materials, are there new foams? And sometimes it's a bit of a challenge because they're coming to Brian and I and the rest of the team and they're like, hey, I got 6 things. And it's just like, all right, let's get a little further down the line. Like it looks good, it feels good. How does it test? The new foam that we're talking about is called Incred, and it's a foam that started about 3 years ago of finding this material that wasn't being used in the footwear space, but was used in associated industries, and was like, this feels really special. Like it's really lightweight. The gram density is a lot lighter, lower than where we've been in the past. It also had a really high rate of energy efficiency. So consumers think energy return, bounce, responsiveness, that was kind of like next level. Like we were curious, like, can those results be correct? Like we're going up 3, 4, 5% in efficiency from where we were. And that was like a big breakthrough. And it was just that mindset of like, we've got a material, and it literally started with a material that we didn't know how to mold or manufacture into a midsole. So it was sheets of the material, like think of a memory foam mattress, cutting it, gluing them to get the height, and then shaping
like
it.
Buffing it down.
Buffing it, almost like whittling a piece of wood to get a shape that resembled a Pro or a Speed, and then attaching an upper. So the first pairs were just hand buffed, made by hand, not manufactured, not injected, and then getting them on different athletes on the team. Certainly Jared, he's loves to be a bit of a guinea pig. We love to get him in the lab, and he put it on and was like, yeah, I'm gonna wear this. Like I'm gonna start training in this. I wanna race in this. And we're like, well, it was made by hand. It was glued very fast. Like just temper your enthusiasm. But it led us into like, all right, now the team's gonna work sort of extra time on how can we manufacture this material, and got with the team in Asia and our sourcing group and figured out a way that we could inject this supercritical material to create a better experience.
Yeah, I ran with Jared in the early days, and he told me about this secret shoe. And I run with a lot of pros, and they all say they got the best shoes. They're all pretty in line. And when I got this shoe on my foot, I was just blown away. The softness of it, I always say, you see this decoupling, it almost looks like it won't work. Yeah. And then when you get it on your foot, you get this like amazing sink in, and then this pop out. It really is unlike any other foam. I know we talked recently with Philo from Saucony, and he brought up this being in the TPEE family, and that is a very broad category, and we've seen that family used before in the space, but this is another application, another process, and all I can say is you need to get this shoe on your foot. I have never ran in another super shoe like this. It gets me excited because I wonder how much further can we go? I thought we'd hit the limit. Now I get this on. What do you think is next for Saucony, for innovation? Are we gonna see more improvements in foams? Are we gonna see more improvements in plates? What's the future look like?
Yeah, there are a few things that we look at it more holistically. Like it used to be that you make a shoe for an elite athlete, and the foams, the compounds, the geometry stay in that elite category. One thing Ted and I are really focused on is how do we take these polymers, these elastomers, and bring them into our main line, what we call the Core 4, the Ride Guide, Triumph, and Hurricane, and trying to find ways to bring the learnings here into everyday running. I think one thing that the team did that was really smart with the Speed is they brought a shoe that was way more accessible. So when Super Shoes came out, people believed only elite athletes should wear them. And now you look from the winner to the back half of the marathon, and they're prevalent throughout the race because everybody wants the benefit of what these foams can do. And so one of the biggest things we're doing with our innovation is we're trying to democratize it, make it available to more people and more product. Within the Endorphin range, though, there's still a lot we can do. One thing we did with the plate here, it's actually slotted, so it's no longer a full plate. It has sort of a fingers. So as you land laterally and sort of roll across, you can have a more natural rate from sort of the first bed head to all the way across your foot. It provides a lot of pop going forward, but a more natural feel depending on how you hit it. And with the foam being so compliant, that's really important, because we want to be able to really guide you from heel to toe in the most efficient way. So there are things that we can do with the carbon fiber, with the weave of the carbon fiber, the way we orient the plate, even the geometry of the plate, how much rock it has in the forefoot. So there's a lot that we're still doing to try to improve all the Endorphin. But one of the big things, though, really is how do we take these learnings and bring them to everybody?
And you bring up geometries. That is a really important part of building shoes right now. I feel like that wasn't as big of a conversation a few years ago, but we've seen the mechanical advantages you can get with really aggressive geometries, and really for different types of running, you can tune the geometries. Can you go a little bit more into the geometries of a shoe like an Elite that's going to be really aggressive versus something more on the training side?
Yeah, I think when you look at a shoe like, you look at the Elite, obviously we want that full bed of foam. We want a lot of comfort. We want a lot of protection for someone running a marathon or running fast. But there's also characteristics underfoot, so we can carve out a little bit of foam where there's not a lot of high wear and tear, there's not a lot of landing, and put more foam sort of on this, we'd say this center path of sort of where the foot strikes from heel to toe, and covering that, versus when we get to a shoe like the Triumph, which my mind goes to this is that comfort cruiser, it's everyday, it's very democratic. It's going to use a PB-based foam, Power Run PB, but we're going to have a broader geometry. So it's going to be a little bit wider, a little bit fuller through midfoot, and especially as we get up to toe off. So you just have a broader base of material. And then you get to shoes like the Hurricane, and we go even broader for that max comfort, max protection feel. So it's playing with that. I'd say the other thing that we are looking at, and Brian talked about it, is we've got that slotted plate in the Elite 2, in the Pro. It's a full carbon fiber plate, but we're even looking into the future. Are there different executions of the plate in terms of geometry to create a different experience when it works with different foams? And even exploring are there other materials in the carbon world that could provide a different experience or a more elevated experience? So there's definitely room to run on plates as well as the geometry in the foam.
Yeah, and I like that you brought up the super foams now trickling on into the daily training space, because at the end of the day, we want to have a fun experience no matter what pace we're running. And we've seen Power Run PB introduced in Triumph, in Hurricane, and it was fine-tuned a little bit differently. It's not going to be exactly the same feel as what you feel in the racing version, but you still get a similar experience. Really, the only flaw we saw in the past Triumph was it was a little bit heavy. Now, in the most recent Triumph, it's lost over an ounce. So I think that further goes to show you guys are not only introducing foams into trainers, but you're continuing to fine tune them, continuing to make them lighter. And that's the end goal, is to have the lightest, funnest experience that can still do the job.
As you know, we hear from you guys, we get great feedback, we hear from runners. We wish sometimes you want to do it in real time. We know there's a life cycle of building the shoe, but some of those ideas of can we get it a little bit lighter? We don't want a Triumph to be 7 ounces, because then it's going to be outside the scope of every day, but getting it from 10 something to 9 something, our team's really good at taking that challenge on of all right, how can we tweak the blend, the formula, so it's going to deliver the same responsive feeling, the same durability, but just a little bit lighter, whether that's gram density or tweaking the formula. So getting that in a Triumph and a Hurricane for autumn winter 25 is going to be huge.
Now, back to the Endorphin series, we've got the classics, the Pro, the Speed, we've got the new Elite, and then of course we've got the Endorphin Trainer, which almost takes elements of earlier versions of the Endorphin Shift, takes some learnings from the Kinvara Pro. How does the training element now mix into Endorphin line, and where will we see that continue forward?
The Endorphin trainer is a fun one where we said, let's use, that idea of democratizing the materials. Let's take that Incred run, and can we build it into more of an everyday proposition, but one that's focused on sort of efficiency. So we know there's a lot of runners that want a plated experience, a more efficient experience, and they're wearing it every day. So to build something with some of those creature comforts. So the upper has more the feel of a Ride or a Triumph. It's got a more substantial heel counter. It's got a little bit thicker, more durable mesh material. And then increasing some of the traction and durability underfoot with a layer of power run. So giving that sandwich. And then, like I was saying with plates, in the Endorphin trainer, we've got a 3/4, we'd say teardrop shaped plate. So where you land in the heel, it's all foam. You're not landing on a plate. The plate comes into play through the arch forward. So it creates just a faster roll, a faster transition. So you get the best of both worlds where it's soft, comfy landing, faster takeoff, engineered for everyday use.
Yeah, you don't get that levering effect you get when you impact a plate right in the heel, where if you land on a Pro, it just accelerates you right through. It allows you to actually come into the heel, take that energy and absorb it, and then as you transition forward, you get the benefit of the plate. So it's definitely more of a heel strike, slower pace, tuned plate. And like Ted said, with the combination of foams, having Incred run directly beneath your foot, you get that responsiveness, but you have a really supportive bed of power run beneath it. So it's a different experience for sure. There's really nothing out there like it, and we're getting good feedback from the runners who are wearing it now.
Well, again, we're here in Austin, Texas. This is where we always debut new shoes. This week, we saw the new Endorphin Speed 5. We've recently seen the Elite 2. For people at home, what can they expect in the future? Is Endorphin line continuing to go strong in the years to come?
Yeah, I mean, Endorphin's a key pillar for us. Like, that's sort of where a lot of innovation starts. So we're going to continue the focus there. We're going to partner with accounts, with runners, with our elite athletes, and we'll continue to innovate in that space. And if we're sitting here in 3 or 6 months, we'll be talking about another new shoe that's going to enter the range that further takes this idea of, like, how do we bring speed, light, fast, efficiency to more consumers. So more on that later, but we've got things coming that I think are going to excite a lot of runners.
Yeah, and I think a big focus here as well is we'll always innovate for the elite athlete, but as you look at speed, is there anything even more accessible than speed in that Endorphin family? So those are things we're thinking about now.
Perfect. Well, it's exciting that you've got an option for daily training, workout day, race day, and even for the fastest racers out there, there is a fast and fun product that fits the bill. I'm excited for where the product is. I'm excited for the future. If you're looking to try out any of the latest and greatest Saucony shoes, you'll be able to find them here at Running Warehouse.